graduation rate report. Luann.
All right. As some of you may be aware, John Kelly, who is a parent in the district, has been doing some work for the district in terms of doing data analysis, some pretty intricate data analysis, actually. And this has been an area of a bit of weakness for the district in just trying to really nail down numbers associated with a lot of these important measures. And I feel like we've finally hit our stride, and we're finally making progress in terms of really being able to have measurable data and be able to look at it and assess it and help us move our work forward. So it's been a long time in coming, but we are getting there. So John, if you would come up and share some information on the A to G completion rate, that would be great.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see you all. So tonight we're going to do two items, and A to G is first and freshman teams is second, but you'll see that the A to G data actually does tie into the freshman team's data, but this is a fine place to start. So A to G completion refers to, and I think actually every member of the board knows this, but it may be that some people listening are unaware, to a specific set of requirements from the University of California and the California State University that are required to be passed by our students to make them eligible. And they are required for UC and CSU purposes to pass these courses with a C- or better. So a D will not help them with it. Now, Sonoma Valley High was one of the first high schools in Sonoma County, I think actually we were the first, to require A to G completion as a condition of graduation. So this has been something that we've been at the forefront of. Now, the table that you'll see in the one-page handout that was included in your packets references the A to G rate for 2014, 2015 for Sonoma Valley High, and it includes some comparison rates from 2013, 2014. The rate that we have there is the number of students who are on path to complete A to G by the end of the year at a C- or better. We haven't previously had the ability to calculate on the fly which students are actually A to G compliant at any given point in time. One of the nice things that's gone on since last January, contractually I've been working with the district, and they've given me access actually directly to the PowerSchool database. And so I can query it and find out what's going on a very, very close to real-time basis. We're not quite at real-time yet, but we're about 2 to 3 weeks out from that. So our data lags about 21 days data that's been put into PowerSchool. So we're getting much closer on that. So as of right now, we know that 136 of our senior class are on path to complete A to G with a C- or better, and it puts us at 47.7%. That is, of all the Sonoma County school districts that graduate more than 100 students, we are the highest. We beat every other one. Roseland does do a bit better than us. You can see they are at the top of the table right up there. And again, the very small community that they have there, the very small number of graduates, that does make some difference. But we have had very strong success with this. We're above the statewide average. And the only other district that does graduate over 100 students that's ahead of us is St. Helena, and they spend between twice and 3 times as much per student. I would like to see how Sonoma Valley High could do with $18,000 per student in funding. So this is very strong news. Now, the reason that this is particularly strong is that, this is sort of a moment where I think that the district can sort of congratulate itself and say this is us implementing a policy sort of ahead of time, seeing something that was going to occur and become increasingly important to our graduates, that is A to G completion. But the really important thing is what does this tell us about historical trends? In other words, are we getting stronger as a district and as a high school? And how are we better serving the needs of our students? And so I'm going to transition at this point. There's 2 items on the agenda, specifically freshman teams and then A to G. But I think if we go to the freshman teams handout, Lisa, at this point, I can actually tie together the last item I want to talk about with A to G a little bit better. So this graph right here is the more, at least, yeah, perfect. So between let's see, in December of this past year, the University of Chicago put out a longitudinal study of 100,000 Chicago high school and middle school students, specifically trying to determine what indicia were the best predictors of student performance in high school, and then college attendance, college persistence, and college graduation. And it's for anyone that would like to read the 135-page report, I commend it to you. I linked to it on my blog. Feel free to download. The 5-page executive summary is very handy because it gives us the essence of the metrics. And the one that surprised them more than any else was that middle school GPA and middle school attendance were strongly predictive of high school GPA and high school attendance. And they were also strongly predictive of eventual college attendance and graduation. The one thing they found about test scores that was particularly powerful was that it controlled access, and that being good at standardized tests was generally a strong predictor of being good at future standardized tests. So middle school attendance and middle school GPA were the two things that they said we should be focusing on, and attendance in particular, because it was a variable that we could affect. We have the ability to intervene relatively quickly when we spot a student going past the breakpoint that study identifies, which is at 90%. So basically, students missing more than 1 day every 2 weeks is where we have a sort of a red light going off and where you start seeing lower levels of high school graduation. Now, the study also found that in general, across public high schools, there was not a significant amount of grade inflation. Typically, the teachers did grade similarly. However, some high schools did get more performance out of some students who were similarly situated. So what that means is that if a student was coming in at about a 3.0, there were some schools that we could expect to see them push that student's GPA up a little bit. And typically, the difference would never be about more than a 0.5 of a GPA. You could move a student from about a 3.0 to about a 3.5. You could move a 2.5 student to about a 3.0. For those students who were above a 3.5, the difference in quality of the high school didn't make that much big of a difference. Those students tended to be self-motivated and they earned good grades. But for that middle portion of the population, the quality of the high school made a very big difference. This study was important for freshman teams purposes because if, in fact, Sonoma Valley High was able to improve the quality of instruction and improve the environment for its students, you would expect to see a change in performance for those students in the middle, that 1.0 to 3.0 student range. And you'd expect to be seeing about a half a grade point change. And so when we went and looked to see the freshman teams program, this is what we were looking for. And to give some small context on freshman teams, again, I know the board's aware of this, but some viewers may not. The freshman teams are a series of small linked learning communities. These are students who share classes together and teachers together. One of the very useful things that we've been able to do with freshman team data is actually sit down with individual students who are moving around in terms of performance, and with the entire freshman team teacher group review them, and hearing their comments, that is, how closely they know the students and what they had to say, was illuminating. In this particular study, what we did was we broke the students down into 4 groups. These are the groups that the Chicago study identified. It's those students who got a 3.5 or better, those students with a 3.0 or better, between a 1.0 and a 3.0, and then students who got a 1.0 or below. And as you can see on the graph that's on the screen, although you may only have black and white in front of you, we color-coded them so that you've got a bronze column, a silver column, a gold, and then our platinum or blue column. And the freshman team program was created between the 2010, 2011, and 2011, 2012 school year. And we would have expected to see the difference between those 2 years if there had been success. And what we saw between them was a very strong movement out of the silver category and into the gold category and into the platinum category. So we saw at the start of the program about 179 students who were falling, it was actually exactly 179, between a 1.0 and a 3.0, and that number's come down to 137. Meanwhile, the number of students that are earning over or equal to a 3.5 has gone from 95 students to 130. Now, the gold category has stayed more or less stable. It declined slightly, but what's going on here is that there's a lot of the silver students moving into the gold category and the gold students moving up into that 3.5 and above category. Now, every 0.1 of a GPA that the students get above a 3.0 is strongly linked to how well, to whether they may complete college and to whether they'll attend in the first place. Every 0.1 is equal to about a 10% greater chance of going to college in the first place and about a 10% chance of graduating from college as well. So what you see here is a very large movement to a point where we have half of the class, actually more than half of the class, demonstrating college potential at the end of freshman year. Now, this is a cultural change for the school. It's never been a school where the majority of students were just expected to go to college, and that's an ordinary thing to occur. But since the creation of the freshman teams program, that has become the prevailing norm at the school, is that most of the students are on path to go to college. Now, there's also a strong correlation between the A to G data and the freshman teams data, and that is, if we see the sort of pattern holding up of A to G completion, that is about 50% of the students in the gold category and about 90% of the students that are in that platinum category, we'd expect that these freshmen, when they become seniors, we're going to see about a 52% A to G completion rate up from our current 47% rate. And again, that should sustain Sonoma Valley as the highest A to G completion in the county of the districts. So that's the essence of what is there with the freshman team program and A to G completion, is that it appears it has all the indicia of a very successful change of environment. There were some other smaller findings that we had. It tended to be that that students coming into the district from outside, that is, private school students and charter school students, they disproportionately were falling into the bottom tier as of 2010, 2011. There was a lot of speculation about what was going on there. What we found, though, is that for those students who did not attend our middle schools but that came into the district after the creation of the freshman teams programs, that the ratio across the bands was identical. So we weren't losing students coming in from the outside anymore. And instead, what we were doing is we were seeing them show the exact same pattern as the middle school students that came from Sonoma Valley Sonoma Valley Unified's middle schools. So those were the two significant findings. But it's a very strong result for the high school and for the freshman teams program. And if you have any questions, I'm here for them.
Thank you so much, John. Who would like? We'll start with the board and then we'll open it up to the public comments. So go ahead, Dan. Looks like you're ready.
Yeah, it just dawned on me the last sentence or two that do you think some of the private school kids benefited from going from a relatively small grouping to a freshman team, which was also relative? They weren't going to such an expansive freshman class. Is that a big determinant?
I think the data supports that conclusion. So, I mean, what we had suspected was that what was happening was that the students were just getting disconnected prior to the creation of freshman teams in freshman year. They were sort of getting lost a little bit. It's a much larger school in an unfamiliar environment. They're definitely, again, the normalization across the bands suggests strongly that the small communities were, in fact, having the desired effect, that the people were sort of not able to avoid attention, that the teachers were able to make sure that connection was taking place. I can't state it causally, but it's definitely correlated.
John, thank you for giving, not donating, but applying your time, because I would have to say you have it. From my perspective, you have a gift with databases. But also, it is stunning for me to look. I mean, well, I actually do sort of enjoy seeing that we are significantly better than Santa Rosa High School. Not to gloat or to put them down, but as a marker that we've done good things.
I mean, it's one of the interesting findings, right, is that in general in Sonoma County, we tend to have a very successful public school system across the county. We have a number of very high-performing public schools with high graduation rates. But I think one of the key differences is that Sonoma Valley early saw that A to G completion was something that needed to become part of our graduate profile. And so we moved on it before anyone else. And as a consequence, our teachers, our administrators are prepared for this, and they can spot students who are starting to struggle, to have a problem with it. And indeed, I think they work quite hard to catch students up who might actually miss a course. You can see it when you look at the transcripts that there are a lot of students who will take the time to repeat the course to make sure that they can meet the A to G requirement. So we sort of don't let people fall behind. We keep an eye on them, and that makes the difference. You can see it in the table.
Just thank you, Luann, for having the courage to pretty much just demand that we do it. And also for having the strength to just push freshman teams as a winning idea. Vision does that, I think, is that, you set it and then you go. And Roseland is a charter school. It is a devoted community that demanded it. And so it's a good thing for us to compare to, but it is a very different thing. And so I'm so, as having spent years teaching disadvantaged kids, I'm just incredibly grateful to the district.
There is one point I wanted to add. One of the concerns that came up, or potential criticism of it, was, is there grade inflation taking place at the high school? In some respects, our teachers giving easier grades than they were. And there's no evidence of that. Indeed, the students at the high school are taking harder courses. The number of students taking accelerated coursework has doubled. Part of that is due to the surge in the number of Flowery students. We have quite a few students coming in taking Spanish 2 and Spanish 3 now, but again, we still have very strong accelerated math numbers throughout the district. We sort of have this. And it's interesting that the two groups don't necessarily overlap. Some do, but it's created a situation where we have multiple axes of accelerated achievement. And I think that actually is one of the reasons that the class is getting a bit tighter drawn. That acceleration crosses ethnic lines, and I think it's a notable plus for the school that it has that going on.
I would just say thank you for quantitatively validating what we've heard as what the freshman teams are doing there. From a cultural standpoint, I think that's one thing that resonates really well with me as far as what we're doing at the high school. And also, if I'm not mistaken, so 2016 will be the first cohort that graduates of the freshman teams, I guess, or the first class. This one? So do we know exactly what the data is for people going to college, et cetera, that were part of the freshman team, that relative to some of the findings? Or?
Well, we know that 47% have qualified, and that's up from 41% 2 years ago.
Got it.
So, I mean,
Okay.
we do see that there's a positive knock-on effect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And one further thing I
Yeah.
wanted to say is that Luann last week on, I think it was Thursday night, started texting me saying, John, what's the breakdown of the A to G completion? And so I was able to, it was kind
He
of
was
a,
great. I needed it for this 10,000 degrees event, and he.
and our concern was is that it had been disproportionately one way or the other, but it was actually one student off right down the middle. So it was kind of nice to see that there's no difference there. It's across all groups. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Britta, did you have anything? No.
I'll just say thanks. It's great. The numbers really help put some facts and quantitative stuff to the qualitative stuff. And my daughter was the second year that they did freshman teams, and it was great. And I didn't think it was going to have an impact on my kid. I didn't, I knew it would be a good idea, but it really has been great. So, and this shows that it is really good. And we just keep doing, we get better every year, too. That's the other thing that's great about it, so.
I mean, it kind of makes us smile and pat ourselves on the back, but of course, it's the students, first of all, who are just who are achieving at this level. And then, we have a lot of really dedicated freshman team teachers, and I don't think that they've always been able to realize quite the impact they've been having, and it is a very significant impact.
And it's important for the teachers to do that lateral collaboration, and this gives that opportunity for them to do it, so.
It was
That
fun.
helps the students.
It was funny sort of to sit with the freshman team teachers and go through the students and to sort of see the sort of competitive nature between the teachers about some of the students doing well, watching the math and science teachers argue about whose subject was more important. It's a fun experience. It was a great group of teachers.
Rick, it looked like you had something that you wanted to add.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm actually seeing the data. Wow. I'm really proud of my class. That's super cool. Like, you can say like 47%, but seeing how it compares to other schools, that's really amazing. And another thing, I was the first year freshman teams at the high school. I do think it's kind of cool how the teachers, actually it's kind of scary how the teachers talk about you when you're not there. Mr. Hausman, my PE teacher, came up to me one day and said, Rick, why did you get a C on your geometry test? And I was like, how do you know my grades? And so I don't know. I think it's actually really cool that they're talking. It makes me feel like they care about me, and they push me, whether I'm in math or I'm in PE, being pushed to do better in geometry, and I think it's pretty cool.
I mean, I was glad to hear that we beat Annalee in swimming, and I'm also glad to see that they're only at 36.3% A to G and we're at 47.7. So
There we go.
It's not just sports.
Maybe I think it's the Valley. There's something going on here.
I forgot to say this. I was trying to think, and that always disrupts me. But this is so well written. I just enjoyed reading it. And believe me, I don't sit down as a hobby and read statistical analysis. But, even little deft things that you said, like one of the most common criticisms, and then a more nuanced critique. I mean, that says a mouthful. But it was fun to read, and keep this stuff coming.
Well,
Okay.
it was funny because Luann sort of gave me this requirement that it be one page, and I did use front and back for that one.
Like two fonts.
I know, I saw the font got smaller and smaller as we went.
There was some stuff I wanted to get in there. So
You're going to have to give us cheaters with this next time, cheater glasses. Go.
Thank you.
thank you.
I just wanted to add, too, that one of the things that came out of this work was that being able to look at every single student. So for those students who started out more successful in middle school and came to high school and their GPA dropped, we were able to track that, too, so that we could have a better eye on the kids who should have been performing at a higher level who were struggling in that transition. And that was something that was unanticipated, but that has contributed to the work that's been done here.
And the freshman team teachers were clear that if we can give them that data at P2 next year, first semester, that will give them the opportunity to intervene timely for the students who have moved between a band down. So we did have some, we had a couple of students who were in that 3.5 plus category who fell, and those are places where I think, really targeted. We know based on their middle school performance that they can make that higher number, and so we'll probably be able to do that next year.
Before you go, John, I'm really grateful for the data and the path we're on, and know that we still have our work cut out for us. And a couple questions. One is, was there any tracking on behavior issues? And I know that the teachers came up, I think it was the year after we first started or something, and they did purport that there was less behavior issues, and like Rick said, the teachers all knew the students, and there's that personal connection, and so do you plan to track that? Are you going to? Have you? What's the?
Part of the LCAP process requires us to report on a series of school environment indicia. So when the LCAP comes to the board at the start of June, there's going to be very comprehensive data on absenteeism, suspension rates, expulsion rates, and you'll see it. And one of the things that's happened this year is that the state of California has changed those definitions for us of those metrics. So the numbers are going to look quite different. They're going to go in varying directions, and it's going to be difficult to use those standards to draw comparisons. In some respects, the data has worsened. We have had some more incidents. In some respects, it's gotten better. Attendance is very, very good at the school. So as you would expect, the data, between different years, you can see small changes in the data. And in general, they're not significant. It's the data of kind of breathing. It just happens, different classes. But like I said, you're going to see a very comprehensive report on that in June. But I didn't see anything in that was a red flag that indicated that we were having worse issues on that. And if anything, the freshman teams are probably making it better. But this was focused on the academics and not on the behavior.
Okay, thank you. And also other types of tracking. So tracking after freshman team, and will we have more sophomore teams, or is that going to be translated? I know this is kind of a question for Luann, so you don't necessarily need to answer this, but just ideas, putting it out there about, I know that we have academies now, so we have 2 academies, so do we want to have more teams, or do we want to continue with academies or have advisories? There's all these kinds of things to look at, but then also tracking after the students leave high school, and that would tie in with the A through G and how we're doing with that. So looking at more things like not just the freshman year of college, but a couple years out there and how our students are doing, that could be interesting data for us to look at and use. And finally, this personal connection with the teachers, and what Rick said, it's like summarizes it all as far as that can't be replaced. The students are with these teachers for the whole, day, as long as with parents and longer. And, we rely on the teachers to be our eyes and ears and more, and, shaping future leaders, of course. So that personal connection is a huge part of it. So this seems to be just an answer to that, which is great.
Regarding the question of what the 10th graders, 11th graders, and what do they look like after this, we ran the A to G numbers to see how many sophomores and juniors were on track, on path to complete A to G as well. And if I recall correctly, about 83 or 84% at the end of freshman year are on path. And then it falls off at about 11 or 12% per year going forward. So you do come down to about that 47, 48% number by the end of senior year. But remember, those are now that number was at a D minus, not at a C minus. You're going to want to take about 12 or 13% off that number also for the GPA number. So you see as the courses get more difficult, you see GPAs moving down, but the line itself keeps going up each year because the overall performances just keep getting better.
And if it's one class, that could be, they're no longer in your list either. So that might be also like gradations, or, I don't know.
The counselors are very good about reaching out to those students who miss one class. And for example, you have to pass every single semester of English to complete A to G. And so if you blow it one time, that's it. But the counselors don't sort of stop there. I mean, you can see that There was one girl that took a particular course 4 times, and she finally got it passed, and she is now on path to A to G complete. And I mean, they do that. They just don't let people fall off the radar.
Thank you so much. We'd like to open up to the public. Is there any public comments or questions? Okay. Oh, Kathleen?
I just have to
Ms.
say the
Howing?
one comment, this is Kathleen Howing, principal. The one comment that John said at the end is the counselors and the teachers are relentless with those kids and making sure that every student has opportunity, and they go through those transcripts and they catch those kids and they have them do summer school, they have them do Odyssey online, they have them, you know, every opportunity. And so when we're looking at the A through G as a freshman, we're looking at a sophomore, when we ask the counselors, and I think John probably saw this too, when we ask them, is this student A to G, they're very reluctant to say no until almost the very end, because sometimes they do pull it out at the very end. And so I just wanted to, kudos to the counselors, the counseling staff, and everybody that works with them with the loads that they have. They really are very attuned to that and want to make sure that every student completes that. And not because we want them all to go to a 4-year college. It's because we really believe that that standard is a standard that will make our kids successful in whatever they do. So I just wanted to highlight that because John was on the statistics with more the human side of how hard people are working to make sure that they do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. So, we have another public comment.
Yeah,
Gina?
I just wanted to share. You know, I speak a lot whenever I'm involved in a conversation comes up about A through G. I discuss the fact about representing a school district, and my children graduate from a school district that's the first one to adopt an A through G. You probably are aware, you know, that Dr. Armaniana from SSU dropped quite a bombshell, and I was in the room at the event where he said all the high schools everybody should take A through G, and the high schools should all require it. And that conversation, I know Santa Rosa City Schools, that's not really a conversation they're ready to have yet. I attended another event where Ruben Armaniana debated a teacher from the high school, from Santa Rosa High, who was very much against it. And I won't go on what his reasons were. So, I mean, this is a countywide conversation that is happening. There is resistance. I tried to encourage a friend of mine who organizes a Latino leaders group called Los 100. I think Salvador, I think you've attended some of his events before, and I encouraged him. I said, you know, I think that could be, he's trying to understand what Los 100 could do around education, and I've tried putting the bug in his ear and said, you know, I think this issue is something that Los 100 can lead on and really pushing to get A through G throughout the county. But I think countywide we are years away. And what I would encourage, John, in the school district is share this information as many opportunities as you can, you know, the data and showing that it's making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great idea.
Yeah, so this week when I texted John about the numbers, I was actually at a forum hosted by Ed Trust West and 10,000 Degrees up in Santa Rosa, which was in response to that forum that Gina was just talking about, where it was Ruben Armaniana and a teacher who were debating, and I don't really know what happened there. I didn't attend, but at this meeting they had the former superintendent from San Jose Unified, which actually moved to A to G in 2004. And so she talked about the whole experience and the data, and they recognized at that forum, they recognized Sonoma Valley and Roseland. Both superintendents were there, and we talked about what it meant and that it's more of an equity issue, right? It's everybody having access. That's what it's about, and supporting those students in gaining access. And so it was a really great conversation, and there were quite a few people in attendance. So where it goes from there, you know, we are happy to, I'm sure the trustees, myself, Kathleen, whomever, to kind of continue to advocate for it, because it really is a bigger issue than kids meeting the requirement. It's about access, you know, and equity. So it's very poignant. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, Gina.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, John. Thanks a lot. Good job.